One thing we love about Marvel movies is how seamlessly they blend together lighthearted moments with serious, heart-wrenching drama and action. After 20-plus MCU films and counting, it's safe to say they mastered the art of it. Spider-Man Far From Home is no exception, and today we're going to take a deeper dive into some of the awesome jokes and references you might have missed the first time around. Let's explore the truth about Earth 833 and the limits of Peter Parker's pop culture knowledge. We have to admit that we were pretty much as excited as Peter Parker was to discover the Marvel Cinematic Universe is now a multiverse. Hooray! Or at least we think it is now that we learned Quentin Beck was lying when he claimed to be from another timeline. When talking to Peter Parker and Nick Fury, he claimed that the current MCU timeline is known as Earth 616, which coincides with the comic books. Quentin claimed to be from Earth 833, which isn't just some random number. It was the home of William Braddock, also known as Spider UK. Yes, this character was kind of a combination of Spider-Man and Captain Britain. He was the Spider Totem of Earth 833, as well as a member of the Captain Britain Corps, which worked to keep the multiverse safe and functioning. Spider UK definitely had a lot on his plate, but less so after Earth 833 was destroyed, just like the universe Quentin Beck claimed to be from. We all know that the 2002 movie Spider-Man, directed by Sam Raimi, helped kick off the superhero movie craze we all find ourselves caught in right now. Spider-Man is one of the most popular superheroes of all time, and actor Tobey Maguire had the honor of portraying him on the big screen. But he almost didn't make it back for the sequel, Spider-Man 2. Allegedly, Tobey had injured his back at some point during the filming of the first movie. This inspired him to ask for a sizable raise that Sony balked at. During negotiations, they threatened to take the role and give it to another actor instead, namely the ultra-talented Jake Gyllenhaal. Suddenly, Tobey and Sony were able to come to an understanding, and Tobey would play Spider-Man in the following two movies in the series. So the fact that Jake Gyllenhaal was cast as Quentin Beck in Far From Home is actually kind of hilarious. We wonder how many pop culture references Peter Parker makes compared to comic book references made by Marvel Studios. There was definitely no shortage of them in Spider-Man Far From Home, and even the hotel the students stayed at in Venice was a tribute to something comic book related. It was called the Hotel DeMatteis, which is named after famous comic book writer J.M. DeMatteis. DeMatteis has written a variety of different comics, including some about fan-favorite Marvel characters like Doctor Strange, Namor the Submariner, and of course our friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. But there's one storyline featuring a famous member of Spider-Man's Rogues Gallery he's particularly known for, and that is Kraven's Last Hunt. The story is about Sergei Kravinoff, better known as Kraven the Hunter, and we might have seen another nod to him during Far From Home. There was a character known as Dimitri, who appeared to be working for both Nick Fury and Quentin Beck. Kraven has a half-brother named Dmitry Smerdyakov, also known as the Chameleon, the first villain Spider-Man ever faced in the comic books. Everyone knows Happy Hogan is often depicted as being, well, less than happy, but he's not the only person with his surname to have a rather unusual name. During the scene in Far From Home when Happy presents Aunt May with an oversized check and some awkward flirting, there's a poster in the background advertising a wrestling match. The contenders are Crusher Hogan versus Bonesaw McGraw. In the comic books, Peter tries his hand at wrestling in order to win some sweet, sweet prize cash and goes up against a character named Crusher Hogan. This wrestling part of his origin story was included in the 2002 Spider-Man movie, but Crusher's name was changed to Bonesaw McGraw in order to avoid confusing Crusher Hogan with the real-life wrestler Hulk Hogan. So in this one scene, we have Crusher Hogan, who can be confused with Hulk Hogan and who also has been called Bonesaw McGraw, along with Happy Hogan, who, as far as we know, isn't a wrestler. In Far From Home, Peter correctly deduces that if Spider-Man keeps showing up wherever Peter Parker is supposed to be, eventually people are going to figure out his secret identity. So to get around this, he wears a black suit, which pretty much looks exactly like his standard Spider-Man costume down to the shape of the eyes. In an effort to maintain Peter's secret identity, he's referred to as Night Monkey when he's wearing his all-black superhero costume. When MJ questions Peter about the webbing shot by Night Monkey, he weakly suggests that maybe he's a spider monkey. But there actually is a miniseries called Marvel Apes, which is about, well, you can probably guess. It features a character who's indeed called Spider Monkey, and he has to work with the Ape Ventures to save the day. During the post-credit scene of Spider-Man Far From Home, we got hit with the big reveal that Nick Fury and Maria Hill were really secret Skrulls the entire time. We had pretty much stopped suspecting everyone of being a secret Skrull after Captain Marvel, but apparently we stopped too soon. We learned that while Talos and Soren were trying to keep it together on Earth, Nick Fury was doing God knows what up in outer space. We saw him seemingly relaxing in front of a hologram, which might have looked familiar to fans of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. After Agent Coulson lost his life in the Avengers, he was revived using Project T.A.H.I.T.I. The project was supposed to be able to bring back fallen Avengers and was conducted using the body of a Kree, an alien species we also heard mentioned in Far From Home. It left Coulson with implanted memories of T.A.H.I.T.I. and the compulsion to describe it as a magical place whenever it's mentioned. We all know that our beloved Marvel movies are divided up into different phases. Phase 1 kicks off with Iron Man and ends with the Avengers. Phase 2 starts off with Iron Man 3 and ends with Ant-Man, while Phase 3 begins with Captain America Civil War and finishes with Spider-Man Far From Home. Marvel Studios likes to keep things quiet about the next phase until the last possible moment. So news on Phase 4 is scarce, and we're desperate to know more. Of course, Marvel Studios just can't resist teasing us about it. After the over-the-top memorial for the heroes lost in the Infinity Saga, Betty Brant said it's time to move on to a new phase in our lives. Of course, she was talking about moving on after the blip, but it was also a nod to the end of Phase 3 and the beginning of Phase 4. This was reaffirmed at the end of the movie too, when we spotted a wall under construction which read, "We can't wait to show you what's next," and had the numbers 1, 2, and 3. In most Spider-Man lore, Uncle Ben is a very important character. In the comic books, it was established that Uncle Ben and Peter enjoyed watching the New York Mets play together. Poor guys. And we saw a Mike Piazza jersey hanging up in Peter's room. We also saw that the suitcase he packs for his trip is marked with the initials BFP, or Ben Franklin Parker. The comic book character Uncle Ben was modeled after founding father Benjamin Franklin, hence his middle name. The creatures we later learned are illusions created by Quentin Beck and his accomplices are referred to as elementals. There are a group of actual characters called the Elementals in Marvel Comics, but they don't have anything to do with Spider-Man. Instead, the Elementals we saw in the movie closely resemble the classic Spider-Man villains Hydro Man, Sandman, Cyclone, and Molten Man. There were even tons of references to these characters during the movie that you might have missed. When Betty and Ned are posing for photos in Venice, you can see a boat which reads ASM 212, which is a reference to Amazing Spider-Man number 212, where Hydro Man made his debut. His origin story is similar to the one Flash Thompson recounts for his classmates. When the Skrulls disguised as Nick Fury and Maria Hill are investigating a disturbance in Mexico, they walk past a license plate reading 463. Sandman first showed up in Amazing Spider-Man number 4, which came out in 1963. There's also a scene in Paris which shows a license plate reading TASM 132, or the Amazing Spider-Man number 132, which is when Peter fights Cyclone for the first time. When Peter fights the Fire Elemental, you can see a license plate reading ASM 28965. Amazing Spider-Man number 28, released in 1965, was the first appearance of Molten Man. No small part of the movie was spent establishing that Peter Parker does not want to be a giant world-saving hero. He wants to stay as our friendly neighborhood Spider-Man and desperately doesn't want to take over as the next Iron Man. But after royally messing up by giving the Edith sunglasses to Quentin Beck, Peter realizes he has to step up and fix things. Happy Hogan tells him to put together a suit while he takes care of the music. Happy puts on the song Back in Black, which is performed by Tony's favorite band AC/DC. It's also a song that was featured in the movie Iron Man. Another AC/DC song was featured prominently in The Avengers, when Tony decides to use Shoot to Thrill as his entrance music. And of course, pretty much the whole soundtrack for Iron Man 2 is made up of AC/DC songs. Although Peter seems to approve of Happy's choice in music, he also states that he loves Led Zeppelin in response to hearing Back in Black. This proves that not only is he clearly his own hero and not just a new Iron Man, but there are definite limits to his pop culture knowledge. There was another moment when Peter rejected the mantle of head of the Avengers, which contained a hidden joke. Seriously, at this point, Peter has turned down the Avengers pretty much as often as Jon Snow has turned down becoming King of Westeros. We get it. You don't want it. When Quentin Beck and Nick Fury are trying to talk to Peter about the elemental issue, Peter replies that the situation sounds like big-time superhero stuff. While this may have seemed like a very childlike statement, it was also a nod to a comic book storyline known as Big Time. In this storyline, Peter does indeed end up fighting bigger enemies, creating more intense armor and taking his career to the next level. This is also when he creates his stealth suit, which looks similar to the black one we see him wearing in Far From Home. In fact, this suit is also sometimes referred to as the Big Time suit because of its role in that storyline. The comic book version of the suit was intended to provide Peter with protection against the sonic screams of the Hobgoblin. We know it's been said time and time again that the MJ we know from the MCU is not the same Mary Jane Watson from the comic books. Her MJ nickname is just supposed to be a tribute to the famous comic book character. But Far From Home included yet another homage. When she's in Prague, MJ wears a sweatshirt bearing the image of a tiger. In the comics, Aunt May is eager to introduce Peter to her friend's lovely niece, Mary Jane Watson. Peter is resistant to being fixed up by his aunt, but eventually he comes face to face with Mary Jane, who greets him with, "Face it, tiger, you just hit the jackpot." And hey, she wasn't wrong. MJ actress Zendaya even paid tribute to this famous line by dyeing her hair red and posting a pic with the caption, "Face it, tiger." Even though he may have spider powers, Mary Jane often uses tiger as a term of affection for Spider-Man. And to be fair, it does sound a lot nicer than lovingly calling someone Spider. We all know that Quentin Beck specializes in illusions. In the comic books, he's a special effects artist, but in the MCU, he's an ex-employee of Stark Industries, who contributed to the unfortunately named barf technology. Hey, the name wasn't the part that he contributed. Quentin manages to pull off some totally amazing illusions over the course of the movie, but it was just foreshadowing the shocking mid-credits scene. In the comic books, Peter first encounters Mysterio during The Amazing Spider-Man number 13. Mysterio is determined to make the general public think Spider-Man is a bad guy, and his plan works so well that even Peter Parker himself starts to wonder if he's a villain. He considers the possibility that he has developed some kind of multiple personality disorder, which might sound crazy, but is it really any crazier than having spider-based powers? Of course, eventually, Peter figures out that it's the villainous Mysterio messing with his head, but at least he was proactive by making himself a psychiatrist appointment. In Far From Home, we also saw some flashbacks among Mysterio's illusions, including the sweatshirt-based costume we saw Peter wear before Tony hooked him up with his brandy new Stark Industries technology suits. If you've ever wondered if there's anyone out there who's universally loved, just consider the fact that some people out there don't enjoy our friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. In the fictional Marvel universe, he has many detractors, and they're not all supervillains eager to conquer the world or commit crimes. Jonah Jameson despises vigilante justice, and Spider-Man in particular. In fact, despite the trouble he causes him, Peter Parker has sympathy for Jameson and says he understands why Jameson has it out for him so badly. He is one of the most iconic characters in the Spider-Man franchise, and actor J.K. Simmons absolutely exemplified the character in the Spider-Man franchise. So not only were we shocked to see Jonah Jameson in the mid-credits scene of Far From Home, but he was played by none other than J.K. Simmons himself. Considering that the MCU is its very own isolated cinematic universe, this was incredibly surprising. What does it say about the concept of the multiverse and the other Spider-Man movies created by Sony without the input of Marvel Studios? We might not have the answers to these questions yet, but we definitely love the fact that Jameson is in the MCU, and that he and the Daily Bugle are a spoof of the real-life Alex Jones and InfoWars. Poor Peter Parker just can't escape the issues weighing heavily on his mind when he takes off on his vacation. When he's trying to select a movie to watch on the plane, not only does he not get to view one with MJ, but the selection is pretty grim. He sees one movie called Finding Wakanda, which we can only assume is a documentary on the newly public nation of Wakanda. There's also a movie called Heart of Iron, which is all about Peter's late mentor, Tony Stark. Of course, the title could just be a play on the title Iron Man, or it could reference the arc reactor that kept Tony alive. But there's also a comic book character known as Ironheart, who builds herself an Iron Man suit and continues the legacy of Tony Stark after he falls into a coma. Riri Williams is definitely a character we wouldn't mind seeing in the MCU, so we are totally okay if this is a bit of foreshadowing. And we have barely scratched the surface on all of the lighthearted moments and references from Spider-Man Far From Home. Make sure to share your favorite movie moment with us in the comments section below, and then click on that subscribe button for more videos from us here at CBR. Bye for now.